Fire away. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the May Gratitude, Inspiration, Happiness Workshop. And I think, am I right in saying it's the 6th one or 7th one that we've held? Pardon?
Yeah.
It's something like that. Yeah. Don't really know anymore. I've lost count. We should be counting. Tonight we have a fabulous array of speakers. Many of you will know us all because we often do our lives through the groups. We have the Chief Gary Jenkins, the Queen Robin Lee Nichols, and the Goddess Susan Lang, and myself speaking too. So just a few quick housekeeping things that I just want to mention. That all our views and opinions are our own, so take what you want from it, but we're all here to just provide support, a little bit of love, entertainment and happiness for you all. But yeah, it's just our opinions, so take what you want from it. We will have a Q&A at the end, but feel free to leave at any point. We won't hold it against you, I promise. If you need to bounce, just go. And please,
except Susan.
Yeah, except Susan, yeah, because if you go, then the whole thing ends. So you have to stay on whether you like it or not. Please add any comments in the chat box, any questions that if you're not comfortable asking that someone can ask on your behalf, more than happy to do that. Also, I think that's about it really. Also, there is no more also, so I think that's about it. So first up we have Gary. We are talking about seasons. We decided on doing a topic for the call, so this one was kindly gifted to us by Kellyanne, who is on the call today. So thank you for that, because it kind of helps us all to think about something around a certain topic. So it really helps us to really use our brains, and hopefully you'll get something inspiring from it. Like the seasons of the year, life changes frequently and drastically. You enjoy it or endure it as it comes and goes, as it ebbs and flows. And that is a quote by Burgess Meredith. And I thought that was just lovely and a nice way to tie us into a nice way to tie in Gary Jenkins talking about Ecclesiastes. I can't say it, I'm sorry, Gary.
Ecclesiastes.
I absolutely butchered that. I even went to Google to say, how do you say this? And I'm so sorry.
Ecclesiastes.
There we go.
Ecclesiastes is a book in the Bible that falls between Proverbs and the Song of Solomon. And the word itself identifies somebody who teaches before an assembly. And so in English, sometimes it's called the preacher or the teacher, as opposed to Ecclesiastes. But what happened for me when we decided on the theme of season, it just popped into my head, this piece of wisdom literature from the 3rd chapter of the book, the first 8 verses. Now, a lot of us know these words, and we may not have even realized that they came out of the Bible. Back in the 60s, well, actually in the late 50s, Pete Seeger wrote a song, and he called it Turn, Turn, Turn. And in the early 60s, about 1968, I think it was, the Byrds recorded Turn, Turn, Turn. And everybody kind of knows the song from the Byrds, even though it's been recorded and sung by about 8 different people. But the Byrds were the only ones that actually made it go to #1 in the US chart. It made it to number 80, I think, in the UK chart. Canada went to #3. But you know, this song is well known. But here it is. This is right from the scriptures. But let's look at this as wisdom literature. And it says, to everything there is a season, a time for every purpose under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to pluck up what is planted, a time to kill, a time to heal, a time to break down, and a time to build up, a time to weep, and a time to laugh, a time to mourn, and a time to dance, a time to cast away stones, a time to gather stones, a time to embrace, a time to refrain from embracing, a time to gain, and a time to lose, a time to keep, and a time to throw away, a time to tear, and a time to sow, a time to keep silent, and a time to speak, a time to love, and a time to hate, a time of war, and a time of peace. And I just think that when you think about times and you think about seasons, you're someplace on this continuum we call life. It's either you're on an up or you're on a down. Very rarely do we just stay in neutral. We are either winning or we're losing. We're either in love or we're not in love. We're either learning or we're not learning. We're either feeling great about ourselves or we're feeling not so happy about ourselves. It doesn't really matter. Everybody is experiencing something. And if you heard my share yesterday in the group, I was talking about Napoleon Hill, because I read Think and Grow Rich about 34 times in my life. And every time I read it, I kept thinking, this guy just had it all together. This guy just knew what he was doing. He was such a positive force. He was winning every stroke of the way. And then I got the book Outwitting the Devil, where he kind of tells you the truth. He's basically saying, you know, he received this assignment from Andrew Carnegie in 1908. Andrew Carnegie said, I will give you letters of introduction, but you will have to self-fund yourself to complete this assignment. But you are to go and meet all these very wealthy, well-to-do people. You're to find out what qualities they hold in common to succeed and become the successes that they are. And for 25 years, this is what he did. He interviewed people, he collated the information, he started discovering the 17 principles of success and the 31 things that people do that will bring them to failure. He really got it honed down. He created some businesses, he lost businesses, he hired some people in some successful businesses because he needed help, and they ended up taking over the companies and firing him because they didn't like working with him. One of the things he discovered was his personality wasn't one that endeared people to him. And so he had to change a lot of things. And then he got into this idea that he was didn't have the money to get his book published. And he wanted to raise the money. So he had a family and he wanted to take care of his family. So he started going on a circuit where he would go into towns and he would give these speeches about the 17 principles of success and try to teach everybody. And he happened to get into Canton, Ohio, and the newspaper publisher there had been on a crusade for like 5 years, addressing the corruption in the police department. And people saw these two people having a conversation and shaking hands. What they don't know is that he offered Andrew Carnegie a job to come in and be the editor for his paper. He knew nothing else about anything else. He just said, I want to go into the direction of success. I want to change the whole format of my paper. And Andrew Carnegie said, that'd be great. He saw this as an introduction because if he could do this really well, then maybe this guy would publish his book. That was his thinking. But that night, there was a contract put out on the newspaper publisher, and he was murdered. And because he was seen talking to Napoleon Hill, hitmen were sent to kill Napoleon Hill. And the only reason why Napoleon Hill lived through the night was that his car broke down And the hitman just got tired of waiting for him. He didn't get back to his boarding house until about 6 in the morning. And then he had a message to call a number. He called the number. It was a cop who just said, look, they're going to kill you. There are hitmen out to kill you. You need to go into hiding. You need to not go home. You need to go someplace nobody knows that you went there, and just away. And he went to some relative's house living in the deep hills of Virginia. And he lived in a basement for basically a year, afraid to go out, terrified every time he heard a car come down the road because he thought they were coming to kill him. Now, that is not the Napoleon Hill I thought I was knowing about in Think and Grow Rich. But you see, Napoleon Hill had to go through his time, his season. He had to go through all of these successes and failures. He had to find out who he really was. What was his core all about? And he finally discovered that within him, there was another self, somebody that always made the right choices, somebody that helped him make the right decisions that protected him. And he came to a conclusion one evening that he was going to turn his entire life, every decision in the future, to that other self. And that was the beginning of his climb, getting to the right people to get his book published. And we all know the rest of the story. So look, we're all going to go through this. It's never going to be one step that goes forward and upward, and what next step is forward and upward. Most of us are really skilled at one step forward, sliding back 3. But we got to keep going. You just can't say, okay, that's it. I don't want to move anymore. It's not going to work. It's almost like in American football, they have this concept that when a man has the ball and he's running and he gets to a certain point, and then the other people can push against him and make him go backwards, they have this rule called forward motion. It means the furthest point you carried that ball, that's where the ball goes. It doesn't matter that they pushed you back and then you fell to the ground. That ball can go to the furthest point that ball originally moved forward. And I think the universe gives us that forward motion rule, because we may move forward and we may slide down, but if we keep our eyes open, there are rewards that are sent our way. Because as we begin to take those steps to go forward, to get back to that first step that we had slid back from, people, opportunities, guidance, encouragement comes to us in different ways. And then we can take that next step forward. Even though we slide down the 3, we're still one step above where we slid down the last time. And I think we all have to have that in our minds and realize that for everything, there's a time and a season and a purpose for what we're going through. And so that's my share for this evening. Thank you very much. And I turn it back over to you, Madam Toastmaster, Anna Riches.
Thank you, Gary. God, you never fail to inspire us all with your words and your incredible storytelling. I mean, I don't know about anyone else, but I didn't know that about Napoleon Hill. But you do, you always see people at the end of their success, don't you? And think how they're lucky they are and how wonderful they are, but you never see their journey they've been through to get there. And I just thought it was amazing how so many songs have ancient messages in them. So many modern day songs have these messages in them, and we don't even realize it. But thank you for that. That was amazing. So our next speaker is the Queen herself, Robin Lee Nichols, and she is talking about how seasons and grief are so interlinked. It's something that Robin has recognized with those who are returning from a pilgrimage. So I will hand this over to you, Robin, now. So
thanks very much, Anna.
No problem.
Right, I've got a little bit of a share, so let me do that. Let me overcome my tech issues. Right, can you see that? That's awesome. Here we go. I always feel so much better when I can achieve just that. It's always a wonderful thing. There we go. So 13th of May, can you believe it? And I think it is our 6th workshop, I think. I was also counting. So yes. And yes, grief, as the seasons, it is ever changing. And so I've put a little bit of a thing together for you, but I don't want anybody to think that this is going to be sad in any way, because I'm going to talk a little bit about my grief and in fact how it's propelled me forward. And then hopefully it will give others a little bit of a reframe. I love Mary Oliver at the moment. I've never followed poetry, but Mary Oliver just has a way of writing. She has words that are for all seasons, and I love this one especially. We shake with joy, we shake with grief, and what a time these two have housed in the same body. I never ever understood that at the same time I could be mourning my mom or feeling sad about the loss of my brother or my best friend, that I could be happy at the same time. I always thought that, being happy, I'm not doing them a service. But in actual fact, when I read this, it resonates such a lot, because I can be absolutely sad and unhappy in this moment, or in a moment where I'm feeling a loss, but at the same moment, I can feel absolute gratitude and happiness for the present moment that I'm actually in. And just that has been a wonderful lesson for me in how I manage my own grief. As you know, grief is an emotional response to loss. And just in that, when you think about the word loss, it has a very unique meaning to each and every one of us. Loss doesn't necessarily have to be bereavement for a person who we have lost. It can be the loss of a job, the loss of a house, the loss of security. I remember when I was planning my second and third and fourth Camino, and all of a sudden COVID came along, there was a great sense of loss that I felt. There was a loss that I felt around that time that I knew that I would never, ever, ever be able to get back again. And talking about Camino, as I do so often, I've just celebrated a third anniversary of sorts. On the 4th of May, 2019, I finished my first Camino. And that for me has been very much a line in the sand. It was a line in the sand between my life pre-Camino and my life post-Camino. Because certainly the life before Camino, it was very cold and very wintry and very, very gloomy. And when I talk about gloomy, I talk about my mood. And it wasn't until I went on Camino that I realized that grief had brought me there. Grief had brought me to that place where I was able to untether myself from the world as I knew it and go on this most incredible, amazing adventure, an adventure that literally changed my life. Before this, and in actual fact, my first introduction to the Camino, I was sitting having a pedicure. Can you believe it? And it's something that I love doing today still. It's one of my self-care moments. I go off and I have a pedicure. And there I was sitting, as normal introverts do. I was sitting reading a magazine. And it was about this woman who had gone on this incredible adventure. And she had chosen springtime to go off and walk her Camino. She had lost her partner, and the lady writing was a local author or a local writer for one of our magazines. And she was writing about her experience that she shared with her mom. She went in and walked the last 100 kilometers. And that was when it really twigged. But I must admit, at that time, I had no idea that I was suffering from any type of grief at all. All I knew was that I was just incredibly angry all the time. It was literally, something could happen. I could be stuck in traffic and I would absolutely trigger to anger. I would mess up at work and I would trigger to anger. I would be late for work and I'd be triggered into anger. that seemed to be my default response to everything around me. And it was only now, in actual fact, in the last year and a half, where I've discovered how very much I was in grief around my sense of loss of my brother, my best friend, my grandfather, my grandmother, my mother, and then my father. And when I look back now, when I look back at that time, and I remember how I was feeling. I was certainly in this feeling of lack of abundance. I didn't see things as summary as what I do now. I saw things in gray colors. I didn't see beautiful things popping through the pavements when I'm walking now. I see a little flower popping through, fighting through those tiles. I never ever saw those type of things because I was so involved in everything that I had lost. So for me, definitely pre-Camino, very, very much, I was in the grips of, I suppose it's a little bit of a cliche, in a long, cold winter. I chose going on Camino very, very purposefully because, and it was from a practical perspective. When I think about it now, that little article that I'd read that spurred me on so many years before, it was a springtime Camino. And I chose the springtime Camino because it's summer, a lot of pilgrims arrive, it's very hot, and I thought, well, it's going to be too hot. I didn't choose winter because I'm South African and I'm not geared up to be in that very, very, very cold type of weather. So the spring for me was the ideal time for me to go on this incredible adventure. And when I think about it now, coming out of that very, very closed-minded phase that I was in all of the time, moving into that spring and untethering myself from that season of loss, which is what I felt all of the time, moving into that spring where literally I was walking through the most beautiful fields. I had the benefit of having crisp, fresh mornings, and I still love that now. That's, and I know I say it when I come into the group on a Tuesday morning as well, when it's that crisp, fresh morning. I love that part of the season. I love it when I go through seasons during my day. It starts off really cool and crisp, and then it warms up a little bit. It doesn't get too hot. It's just beautifully comfortable. And then I get the cool of the evening again. Those seasonal changes that we are always experiencing. And I went on this Camino, and literally it sprung me into something that was completely new and completely revitalizing for me. And now when I look at myself, I'm certainly not a person sitting before you who is perfect and without fault and without anger and without all of those emotions that don't serve me. I am most certainly now a person who leads a life for all seasons, because I can now understand when I'm angry and I don't take up residence there anymore. I understand that I'm sad and I can acknowledge that I'm sad and I can understand where it comes from, but I don't take up residence there anymore. I don't take up residence in those emotions that don't serve me, because I'm mindful that my grief was indeed my purpose. And there's something that I'm very mindful around, all of the loss that I've had. And it's very, very unique and personal loss, for me. But if I hadn't have had that loss, if I hadn't have had that winter, so to speak, if I hadn't have had that mindset of lack and that gray and gloominess and that coldness, I would not be able to experience what I can experience now. So grief can indeed be our purpose. I read something which is quite beautiful, and grief is unexpired love. And it's so true, isn't it? Love is never ending. And, you know, when you have lost people that bring you love, and you've been brought into this world out of that, that love never ever expires. And I love that because it makes grief so beautiful, in actual fact. It makes grief purposeful. It makes grief more meaningful for us. I love this as well, is that we move forward with grief. You know, as we move forward through the seasons, we don't move on. We don't move on from summer or winter or spring or autumn. We move forward with them, such as grief as well. You know, it's a never-ending phase of ups and downs and roller coaster rides of sadness and tears. But then at the same time, when you have a summary outlook on things, and when you are mindful of things, you can actually be grateful for the wonderful time that you did actually have. And seasons are absolutely purposeful. And as I said, so too can be our grief. And without a doubt, if I hadn't have had those losses that I experienced, I would never have gone to the Camino. If I had never have gone to the Camino, hands down, I would never have been sitting here with all of you and sharing experiences and learning and being grateful in this particular moment, which I always am. And just finally, I've got a little 5-step process that I work my own grief through. And of course, there it is, it's an acronym. And how beautiful it is that grief starts with a G. And of course, I can't do anything without gratitude, certainly not anymore. I have my 3-point gratitude practice that I do as a subconscious thing every day, literally sitting here or upstairs when I'm working. I have my laptop, I've got my washing line there, in fact, even though I've moved. And I'm sitting on my seat, that's my 3-point practice of gratitude. And at the same time, when I'm feeling a little low and I'm feeling a little sad, and you know, and I understand it's grief creeping in, I'm totally grateful for those wonderful things that I've been able to experience, because in fact, we are all just humans on this on this life experience. Realistic expectations, and I do this now every day. You know, and if we are planting a seed in winter, have a realistic expectation that it might not bloom very, very well. Same for me now. When my emotion is low, or when my mood is a little bit low, I don't simply just do what I did before and move on from it. What I do is I sit with it a little bit and I understand where it's coming from so I can move forward with it. Because this is what I found, is that what happens is when we are not acknowledging our seasonal flows and the grief roller coaster that we are on as human beings, we land up with a lot of latent grief that we never, ever, ever actually address. So have realistic expectations about how your emotions are going to affect you. The I in grief involve trusted friends. I put friends in there very specifically because from my perspective, you know, there was no ways that I could have gone to my sister, for example, for help to understand my grief when we watched my father take his last breath, because my sister herself was going through her own version of grief, her own unique version of loss. So for me, involving trusting friends, they are outside of that equation, and they can always give me sound advice in terms of how I'm feeling, and always a good old hug when you need it as well. I love this one, engaging in a tradition. When we go through seasons of Mother's Day and Father's Day and Christmases and Easters and all of those things, there's always, you know, there's always little emotions that pop in, and Dad used to do that and Mom used to do this. And what I love to do is I always engage in a tradition. This last Mother's Day, what I do is I go off and I get myself into nature, get out the old walking poles, and I go off and I celebrate the fact that I was my mother's daughter, because I love that. last step in the grief process, faith, not necessarily a religious or a spiritual faith, faith very much in ourselves, in how purposeful we can actually lead our lives and how meaningful grief can actually be. And when we are looking at it from a summary, bright perspective and accepting that it's going to be gloomy and that the bad things will actually happen, we can have faith, we can actually move on from those feelings of loss. And that brings my share to an end. So I'll just stop that share.
Wow. Thank you so very much, Robin. That was so incredibly thought-provoking. I think we've seen the pictures of your mum, and she shines through in you. And it's just so awesome, your life stories, and it makes me also think and recognizing my emotions and the triggers and importance of being gentle on ourselves, especially when it comes around loss and things like that. So thank you so much. That was incredibly powerful. I think we'd all agree.
Thanks very much, Anna.
Yeah. So I'm going to introduce myself next. So I'm going to be talking about it's okay to be different. And it ties in nicely with seasons because I'll share my screen, shall I? That might be the easiest thing to do. Bear with me. Let me get this up. We will start. Just tell me if you can see it or not. Can you see the full presentation?
No, just the slide that says thank you. Be brave
Okay.
enough.
That's it. That's the last one. That's always good, isn't it? You're with me.
Start with the end in mind.
Yeah. I'm done. I finished. It should be. Try that one.
That's you now.
Okay. Right. Can you see the whole screen now? Not my workings.
Can see your next slide.
The next.
So we can see it's okay to be different, and then the next slide on the side.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Oh,
It's fine, Anna.
no, it's not.
No.
Not okay. Just talk amongst yourself a second. Oh, there we go.
Technology, I love it. Best friends with it.
Now you can see
There
it, can't
we
you?
go.
Woohoo! Right, it's okay to be different. I just love this picture. I love this picture of all the butterflies, and there's just one blue one that stands out. So let me just move. Right, seasons and how this all interlinks. I'm just going to minimize you guys. Seasons are essential. They are a change, they're a cyclic change that naturally occurs all around the world, some more dramatic than others depending on the geographic location. Like everything in life that is natural, the circle is very relatable shape and everything happens in a cycle rather than linear. Look, Elton John proves this in his song, The Circle of Life, so it's fact. Now, I'm not talking tonight about shapes or even all the seasons. I'm going to talk to you about my most favourite season in the Northern Hemisphere, and that is spring, or to be more precise, my favourite flower in spring, the bluebell. Now, I say the Northern Hemisphere because I had spring in the Southern Hemisphere in New Zealand. I hated it. It was always so windy. But I love the Northern Hemisphere spring. The bluebell is known by many aliases, but here are a few of my favourite. Got the woodbell, the cuckoo's boot, lady's nightcap, and the witch's thimble. At the moment, there are abundance of cuckoo's boots everywhere. Everywhere you go, where there is a canopy of natural woodland, there is also a carpet of purple, and it is nothing but breathtakingly beautiful. The bluebell for me is my favourite flower and has so many memories attached to it. As a child, I used to go out with my elderly neighbour, dig up the bulbs and plant them throughout the park behind our house, which are still blooming today. Little did we know that they are protected by the Wildlife Conservation Act of 1981. So I'm waiting for the police to come knocking at the door any one of these days now. And I only found that out from doing the research in this. So, right. So I was out for one of my many walks a couple of weeks back, which inspired the topic of this talk. On this walk, a little plant caught my eye. This specific flower was on its own, like it had been rejected by all the others, or it had taken itself off for being different, as it didn't identify itself as a witch's thimble. This little flower was different, as it wasn't blue or purple, as Cooper would say. That's my 5-year-old. He corrects me constantly that it's purple and not blue, but it was white. It was exactly the same on the inside as all the others, but on the outside it possessed similar traits, except this bluebell was beautifully white. This one plant got me thinking that being different, being out the norm, not being the same as everyone else is a good thing. I've always, from a young age, tried to be unseen, like I'm sure many of you have too. I did this by being like everyone else, but trying so hard not to be different, not to be disruptive or too much of a goody two-shoes, just staying in the middle of the chaotic pack. I kept a low profile, under the radar, and this served me incredibly well as a survival skill through my adolescent years and going through school. But as life has gone on, I had inadvertently developed this invisible cloak so well that I became ignored, looked over and over, shadowed by others. It didn't matter how loud I shouted, how good I was at things, I still wasn't seen. This vibration we give off enables us to be camouflaged even when we don't want to be. I loved this quote, looking things up. They laughed at me because I'm different. I laughed at them because they were all the same. It's so true. So many people laugh, point, humiliate, scoff at others for being different, but really on the inside, they want to break out of the norm themselves, but are just too afraid to do so. Often they silently admire from afar, maybe even jealousy reigns slightly, as if that person is living their authentic self, and they are not. They dare to be themselves. And I don't know whether anyone saw my live this morning, and it was totally not trying to be interlinked with this afternoon's presentation, but I was talking about being your authentic self this morning, and it just, yeah. So I think it is so important if we can get to that point. Like anything, things can change. We can change. Like the white bluebell, it wanted to be seen. It dared to be different. It took itself out of its comfort zone, out of the blanket of purple, and it shone on its own. White bluebells were a rarity, and they still are in the grand scheme of things. There are approximately one white bell in every 10,000 blue. However, slowly but surely this is changing, and more white bells are emerging, and some are even taken on the form of being pink. So this presentation, if you haven't understood the message immersed in the floral undertone, is about being your true authentic self, not conforming to how society tells you to be, but to be the person you want to be. Be like the be like the white bluebell, be brave and be you. It's easy to stand with others in a crowd. It takes courage to stand alone. So thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed that, and it's given you some confidence, some support to get out there and be you, because you're all awesome. Thank you.
That was just lovely. Just lovely, Anna. The colours, the inspiration, the ability to stand out from the crowd as opposed to trying to blend in with the crowd. From someone who was on the opposite of that, I desperately wanted to fit in and never seemed to. It wasn't a case of being able to blend in and disappear. I never ever seemed to manage that either. So I absolutely hear what you're saying. We're all so different. It's
funny, when I was on this walk, it just popped out at me, and it was like, it made so much sense, just that little flower. And I think I will forever remember that flower because it had so many different messages to it. And yeah,
Beautiful.
about being my authentic self, and everyone else should be too. So
Absolutely.
right, enough of me. I will hand you over to the lovely Susan Lang, who is talking about, let me just get my, sorry, our life in seasons. So sit back comfortably, grab your drink. I know I've got mine sitting here now, and hand it over to Susan.
Okay, can you see my screen?
Yeah, but like me, it's all the slides.
Yeah, right, just a wee second. There we go. So first of all, I wanted that my share is not so much about a delivery from myself tonight. My share is actually more a series of questions for you all to reflect on, to think about. And, you know, I'm always up for a bit of interaction if we can have it. So if anybody would like to chime in, I'd love you to do that. So my first question was, what does the word season conjure up for you? And do you know what would be really good if my my screen would move on? That'd be really good. There you are. So for me, when I think about seasons, for some reason I automatically think about trees. And when I think about trees, I think about young trees starting to grow. And then when you see the buds starting to appear for the leaves, and then when you see them, you know, in full colour with all their leaves out, and then when you see those colours changing and they become absolutely beautiful, and then those leaves start to shed. Now, obviously, that's not the case for all trees. You get evergreens, and just as you said, you know, everything's different. But for me, the trees are the thing that remind me on a daily basis where we're at in the seasons. So if you think of a tree, what do you picture? What season do you picture? How does that form in your mind? When you think about seasons, do you think about a particular time of year? Gary, you've unmuted. You coming in with me?
Yes, I'm coming out at you. I don't want you hanging there all by yourself, Susan.
Magic.
You know, I look at the tree, the leaves on the tree, and that pretty much tells me the season that we're in. You know, if I see budding leaves, I know it's spring. If I see full leaves, I know it's summer. If I see leaves falling from the tree, if I see changes in the leaves, I know it's fall. And when it's winter and it's bare, I just sit there and say, well, that's just what it is. It's winter and it's barren.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mine is autumn. The autumn probably is, and spring is that's changed, the dramatic change, isn't it?
Yeah.
And autumn's just filled with so many beautiful colors.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's spring, really, because all the flowers are coming out and everything. But the bit what Gary was saying about winter being bare, I quite like the trees being bare because it actually lets in more light. So yeah, mine for me is spring and autumn.
Thank you.
I like the trees in the spring. They're the first thing I look at in the ground. You know, like my garden is now doesn't have snow on it, and my lake in the backyard is done. But I look at the trees and I look for the little buds, because then I know they've survived. Mm-hmm. They've survived the winter. They've survived all the crap that this winter actually, and my dogs, have put them through. So that little bud on the tree signifies hope for me.
That's
and
absolutely
it gives me the best joy ever to say, oh, my Saskatoon bushes made it. Seeing that little bud on my little grapevine that I know the dogs trampled and the rabbits ate, and it's like, oh, and new growth on my rose bush. Okay, the rabbits didn't actually get it. Yay! So spring is actually a very exciting time for me. So that little bud on the trees and the bushes, and not so much the stuff coming out of the ground, but there are some plants that I'm excited to see that new leaf. So it's always excitement for me.
So I think, Kellyanne, you've taken us on to, you know, my next question about being, what is your favourite time of year and why is that? Has anybody else got anything they'd like to add about their favourite time of year?
Susan's, mine's got to be summer in South Africa. So that's October. And it's sort of linked to a family tradition that we had. And it also brings the view of the baobab tree. I don't know if you have heard about the baobab tree. It's it's called the upside down tree in South Africa because it's got the most incredible branch system above the ground, but it looks like it's been pulled out of the ground and then planted upside down because the roots almost the top of the tree look like roots, but they grow huge and their trunks are absolutely massive. So yeah, for me, when I go up to the Kruger Park, that's the baobab tree. Summer is always something that I really, really love.
Wow, thank you. So if I can share a wee bit about mine, because I'm really conflicted with this, as everything, as you probably know, you've all kind of got to know. I find that in the winter months, the big black clouds get me. And I'm referring to low mood and depression at that particular point in time. And I think it's to do with the short days of daylight, where, you know, where we stay, it can be dark from 3 o'clock in the afternoon and it doesn't get light till 9 o'clock the next morning. And particularly as an office worker in an office with no windows, I mean, I can actually spend a few months of the year not seeing daylight other than at the weekends. And it affects me deeply, physically, mentally. It's just not good. However, in that time, there is also my favourite time of the year. And that's because we visit Dunkeld in December. And we always promised that wherever we were in the world, we would try and get together as a family for that 1 week. And interestingly enough, that week is in huge estate with trees that are hundreds and hundreds of years old. And, you know, we get there and there's a dust in the snow and all these trees, and the deer are wandering about in the grounds, and it's just magical. It's beautiful. So it's interesting that the particular season of the year that I personally really struggle with is also my favourite season. So I wanted to share that with you. So the purpose of this, and I don't quite know how it will go, but I thought, let's try it, let's be brave. And I wanted to take our lives as a season, or not a season, but a year of seasons, the full cycle. And I've grabbed an arbitrary age of 96. So if we all live to we're 96, okay? And if we divide that up by the months of the year and divide them into seasons. So what I did was I took March and April as springtime, May, June, July and August as summertime, September and October as autumn, November, December, January and February as winter. Now actually that, just doing that wee exercise there showed me something that, you know, in my 53 years I had never actually thought about, was that summer and winter are longer seasons, double the length of spring and autumn. And yet, most of us, if you ask us, absolutely adore spring and autumn because we love the colours, we love the radical change. And yet, those seasons, those 2 seasons of spring and autumn are actually the shorter seasons. Now, you may disagree with me, these are just my perspectives, and as I said, it wasn't until I actually started to chart this out, and interestingly, seasons are cyclical and they go round. I've done this as a linear exercise. Surprise, surprise. So what I then did was, as I said, I've taken the age of 96 and I've divided it into the months. So if we think about March and April being our teenage years, or, you know, to age 16, you can think about that as your spring years, and you can reflect on what you got up to in those times and whether they were happy years or not for you. And then May through to the August, your summertime. So you're growing, you're in, perhaps you would think, your prime. Some may disagree. You're most colourful, you're most vibrant, you're most energetic. And then you think about autumn, September and October, up to 56. And then we go into another long phase of our lives, 57 to 96. So I don't know how you think about that, looking at that in terms of equating those particular kind of sections of our lives with the seasons. So moving on from there, that's a bit bright actually, I didn't intend that to be quite as sore in the eyes, sorry. Taking it back a step to, from that being one big, you know, the year with the 4 seasons within it as our lives, reflecting on just the individual seasons as we go through. Do you behave differently in different seasons? Are you more energetic? Are you happier? Why is that? Is it to do with the weather? Is it to do with the colours? Is it to do with, at certain times of the year, you have people around you that you don't have at other times? Is it got nothing to do with the seasons? To do with daylight, as I mentioned, you know, seasonally adjusted disorder, whatever it is. Or do you hibernate? Do you love the winter? Do you like getting wrapped up in your cosy your jammies and putting your electric blanket on and shutting the curtains and listening to the rain and the wind battering outside, knowing that you're safe and warm? Do you put on weight during the winter because you eat too much, because you're comfort eating? Do you exercise more in one season than another? Do you exercise more in the winter to keep yourself busy? Or do you exercise more in the summer because you can get out and about? As I said, these are just thoughts for, you know, to get you thinking. It's not, I'm not forcing ideas into someone else's head. And I suppose just before I go on to this, as a wee aside, for many, many years, our family has lived in the hockey season. And everything we did revolved around from 19, what I was thinking about this the other day, from 2006 to 5 years ago, 2017, our lives revolved around the ice hockey season and the ball hockey season. And the ice hockey season ran kind of August, September through to March, and then the ball hockey season kicked in. And it was quite funny. If, you know, if as a family you have a focus like that, you will find that you follow, you know, not so much the seasons of the year, but it might be a sports season or it might be an educational season. It's just, we're all different. So back to where I was. If we reflect on how many seasons we've already had, how many times we've gone through that process in our lives, the winter, the summer, the autumn, the spring. How many more seasons we think we've got in front of us? And if you consider which season of your life you consider yourself to be in at the moment, is it a season you love? Is it a season you're happy with? Is it a season that you can't wait to finish? Is it a season you can't wait to enter as we move through? And are you inspired to make your current season count, or are you waiting on a new season and you're going to make that season count? And just on that thought, I created a kind of timeline here. Sorry, I'm just moving you all out of the way. You're wondering what I'm doing. Actually, if I do that, that's better. And I kind of mapped that out on this line. And I wonder where you are on that line. I wonder where you see yourself. Absolutely. I'm the same. I'm still 19. And in my head, I'm probably about 13. But anyway, you know, it's
Always be 21.
I'll always be 21. That's when I met you. I better watch what I'm saying.
Yeah, I see. Special times there, special times.
But when you actually look at it like this, and the numbers are spaced the way they are according to what I was saying about the timelines, you know, the summer and the winter seasons being longer than the other ones. I found that a wee bit scary when I looked at that, and I looked at where I sit on that line, and I thought, dear God, I better get my finger out and start making this count. Never mind waiting in that next season. I better actually make sure this season counts and make the best of it. And the biggest mistake we have in life is thinking that we have time. And that's my little share.
Wow, thank you. That was amazing.
Okay.
Amazing, amazing,
That is
amazing.
so awesome.
Yeah.
My brain just went a completely sort of add to your numbers there. But if you look at dividing up that year, if you look at spring and fall as your transition years, summer as your growth years, and winter as your rest years, which is seasonal, you have 16 years of your life in transition.
Yeah.
32 years in growth and 32 years in rest. And we cycle through it.
Yeah.
Sometimes our transitions take a little bit longer because I'm not done growing yet. But when you look at 96 years, that, you know.
Sorry, Kelly, and I remember the kids always saying, you know, when they were leaving school and talking about going on to further education and not really too sure about what they want to do when they grow up. And that was me. I retired just coming up for 3 years, retired from the fire service now. And I still don't know what I want to do when I grow up, because I still don't want to grow up. And it's, yeah, you just don't know at what point in your lifespan or your life cycle is going to be that day that you grow up, and hopefully never get there.
That's right. But in the grand scheme of things, we need to take that third of your life as resting. It's very necessary. Otherwise, the transitions and the you're always transitioning in and out of growth. Yeah. And the rest is so important.
Got to rest and repair. Or as Susan will say, I've been resting for the last 33 years anyway. So it's time for me actually to do something.
No. I have a daughter and a son-in-law who are firefighters too. And cousins and firefighting's in our family quite heavily. So
brilliant.
You don't rest.
I'd just like to say I did sorry, Gary, you go.
No, go ahead. Go ahead, Anna.
Oh, I did back-to-back winter seasons skiing, and you do winter after winter after winter. And just you talking about it, there's only so much you can endure of all the winters before you actually need the seasons. And I think that goes in life too. I think that relates to that as well, because you need those changes. You need that shedding time, and you need that regrowth time, and you just can't be in one place at the same time over and over again to grow. So it was super powerful. Thanks, Susan. That's amazing.
Very powerful.
Yeah.
It's neat how numbers actually work in and make it all make sense, eh?
You know, it's interesting, having been a cowboy at a young age, I never really thought about winter, summer, spring, fall as seasons. For me, they were things like birthing season, tick dip time, roundup, going to market. And when I think about things, it's either I have light or I don't have light. I love the summertime. Maybe I shouldn't have, but you know, the sun would be up by 4:15, 4:30 in the morning in the summertime, and it wouldn't set until 10 at night. When I was a kid. And so you worked from sun up to sundown. So it was a long day. And I hated how hot it got. I mean, it'd be 54 in the shade. And the only shade I had was my cowboy hat, a lot of the time sitting on top of that horse. And that would be the summertime, but I loved the light. And when it came to winter, to me, that was the dark time. You know, when you got to the end of October, especially the first week in December, it'd be dark at 3:30 in the afternoon, and it wouldn't be light till 8 o'clock in the morning. And it was, I called that the slow time, because we'd only work from sunlight to sunlight, just for safety reasons. But it was more like repairing things, getting things ready for the next spring. I mean, it's because the bull's doing all the work out there, so we can have calving season. It's the interesting way, because you know, you guys are all talking about the trees, and I never really thought about them actually. I just thought about what is the next chore cycle that's coming up, because that's what time of year it is.
So that's the cycle of life, isn't it, Gary? You know, and you're never more aware of the cycle of life than when you're surrounded by animals. We had a lady staying with us last night, and you know, she comes from farming stock, and you know, she was talking about, you know, the calving and the lambing and the work, and the, you know, the getting the hay kind of before the rains come, and you know, and like that you know, her life moves in those blocks of time because that's what you have to do. Mother Nature dictates it. You have no choice. You know, it's been, we've had a few powerful conversations actually over the last couple of days. So.
With when I was younger, well, quite a bit younger, I was in grade 5 and grade 6. We lived up north in the Northwest Territories. And it's amazing how much you go outside in the winter at lunchtime. They schedule lunchtime because that's the only time, the only hour you have daylight. And it's like, wow. Oh, there you go. Hi. But then conversely, in the summer, midnight, there's really no night either.
Dark, yeah.
So it's like, it's like dusk for an hour, and then the sun comes back up.
Wow.
Like, hello.
I think that would send me slightly mad.
Oh yeah, as kids, it was, you know, you had blackout curtains for, you know, to get some sleep, but then you didn't have to worry about blackout curtains in the fall, you know, in the winter. So
Wow.
But it puts a whole new spin on this little ball we're spinning around.
Absolutely. Is anybody else among you affected by the amount of daylight or sunshine or?
Yeah, we get this is probably the reason I have my little corner of my office where I do, so I can see everything out during the day. But I mean, it gets in the winter, I think the sun's out about 9 o'clock and then it's gone at 4 o'clock. So it's not a long day, but
I think only
by February you're getting depressed.
in the northern hemisphere, I feel it in February. Never did when I was in New Zealand, because we were outside all the time. It didn't matter what time of year it was. We were just outside all the time. We had animals to take care of. You know, my job involved being outside a lot. So I think even if you just get a small amount of being outside, a bit of vitamin D, it helps. So I reckon if you continue running, Susan, through winter, you'll see a massive difference.
Yeah.
If you do
Yeah,
that.
making sure you get your vitamin D especially in the winter.
Yeah.
Yes, South African way, there's always, we are blessed with not so cold winters. We have very, very hot summers, but we have a very, we don't have to have massive jackets and woolly hats and gloves and things like that. And sunlight, and thank goodness for that.
I always tell people if you really want to experience something different, come to Canada in the winter. Because and not Ontario, because Toronto area, they get there was this.
That's where my family is.
Kellyanne, in 1992, I gave a presentation in Montreal, Canada. And when I was leaving, it was like the biggest blizzard I'd ever experienced. It was like minus 25. It was miserable. And I started going through the process of leaving Canada, and I had gone through all the checkpoints and things, and I'm on my way to where my airplane is. And these two customs guys came up to me and said, "Monsieur," and then they said, "You have to pay an exit tax to leave Canada." And it was like 25 Canadian dollars. And I quickly got them the money and gave it to them. I said, on a day like today, I would have paid 100.
Oh dear.
Yeah. No, it's I tell my daughter she grew up a wuss too, so she doesn't like winters, so she moved out to Vancouver Island where they get spring in February. So
Why not?
Yeah. Hey, why not?
Why not?
We didn't get spring until last week, so
Wow. Well, I think we have just overrun our hour. So unless we have anything else to say or any questions you'd like to give, I think we might wrap up our 6th, maybe 7th call, and to say thank you for everyone attending. Thank you so much for all the speakers. It's been incredible, an incredible evening. Thank you for anyone watching it on the replay. I hope you've enjoyed it, and feel free to comment and share with other people too. And we will be scheduling in another call in June, and the date will be to be revealed shortly, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I don't think we've got a specific date yet. So
no, I think we have. I just can't do it.
Yeah, second. Yeah, I think we do.
Oh, okay, sorry. What is
Yeah,
the date so we all know?
The 10th, I think it is.
The 10th.
The 10th of June, there we go. So we'll be here
10th
Friday, the 10th of June, with some more amazing speakers. So thank you so much to everyone for attending and for contributing. It really is invaluable to us all. So thank you, and have a lovely evening.
Thank you for hosting, Anna. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for your contributions. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye for now.